Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. If you recall, last session we were discussing the consumer behavior in the context or the perspective of international business or international markets. The core issue that we had suggested at that point of time was that nowadays it is not the question whether a company should go into a new country or find a new market in another country, but the question has become, how do we do it? The point is very simple. If you recall, in the beginning of the lectures, we had mentioned Ansov growth matrix. Now, if you look at the model, it will show you that in the left-hand corner, there is something called market penetration, where you find the old market and the old product. And on the other corner, you find normally new market development, which is basically a new market and the old product. What basically happens based on maturity of the markets and saturation of the markets, where logical, it starts with a company trying to market within its own city location, then it tries to spread out, launch, roll out to other areas of the country. And as people keep getting or buying the product, more competition is moving in. Slowly the market becomes saturated. Now, to continue growth for the company, there are two logical options. Third, we will not bother about it, which is diversification. We will focus on the two. That is whether you bring a new product in the same old market and you repeatedly do that. So at a point of time when innovation becomes more difficult, the market has already been totally saturated with the products that are available and competitors have moved in. The market reaches maturity cycle or maturity scale. This is the time when the companies looking for more growth try to start looking at new market opportunities. Now, also remember that as maturity comes in, differentiation within the products, competitive products, goes down. So the buyers can't find real differences. So the logic only is that you have to provide value, and one source of value is to lower the prices, which is not such a good idea for companies, because when you start dropping prices and you enter a price war, more or less everybody or the companies basically lose, even though the consumers benefit out of it. So the logical extension from all this is that companies tend to move out. They try and find markets which are more similar to their own market, because if they have an experience already, it becomes much easier for them to move into a new country. That is the basic logic. So the idea from where we take off today's discussion is that it is becoming imperative that marketers must try and understand the other markets, other countries where customers may be available who may be interested in their products. And we know that. We are becoming quite aware of the fact that most of the people in various countries have become interested in buying foreign products. So it's not common to Pakistan alone, but it is generally recorded that there are many companies or many products which are demanded by consumers, and the basic thrust behind this is coming from two sources. One, market saturation within the original countries, and obviously the information technology, which is rapidly bringing news of new products and new information and the diffusion of products taking place all over the world. So that requires us to try and find strategies by which we should be able to enter countries, new markets successfully. This is true for everybody, including a country like Pakistan, whose export lag behind and need new markets so that they can spur growth, because within the country, the kind of products that we have are already becoming saturated. Value addition is not there. To be able to add value, you need to find markets and you need to find the needs and the requirements of that market which you can satisfy most effectively. Logic like I said, it's very simple. If you already have a product and you can find a market outside where the product can be linked up with the needs of the market, success is assured. However, there is another approach that you go to a market, try and find what is the need, and then develop the product and then bring it to the market. This becomes more difficult when you are actually going away from your own country or own culture. We've already understood in our previous lectures that cultures have tremendous influence on consumer behavior, and we have already looked at even age has been considered as a cultural frame, where including and sex or gender has also been included. So you can see within the country, cultures and subcultures are operative, makes it very difficult to try and bring products which are specifically targeted to a specific market based on product characteristics alone. So what do we tend to do? We try and find commonalities within the markets in such a way that we can find a segment which will be easily satisfied by the capabilities and the competencies that the company already has. Now, if I have that competence to be able to satisfy a particular segment in the market, then if I can locate a similar segment somewhere else, it will be much easier for me to be able to satisfy that segment too. So we therefore move, as we say, towards international businesses and international marketing, and try and analyze those markets based on our study of whether there are similarities or differences. Therefore, we will be looking at certain features as today, and I've already discussed, like say, in the previous lecture, the growth of free trade zones like AFTA, NAFTA. We have the various other SAARC is trying to become a trade-free zone. So we are looking at a number of globalization factors which are becoming important. The issue that we talked about a little bit was, how do cultures or exposure to culture take place? We had suggested at that point that sometimes it is basically initiative of the people, and I quoted Pakistan. We have got a lot of people who have gone to UK, America, and so on and so forth, and they bring all that knowledge. That is one aspect. But the important aspect, which I've just discussed with you, is the behavior of the companies themselves, the marketing companies themselves. Like I said, since they are the ones who are searching for new markets, then it becomes imperative for them to bring this knowledge to the countries that they want to enter. And it becomes more easy with a lot of, lot of commonality in terms of information technology. We have television. You can sit and watch Indian television, and you will find similar products are now being launched in Pakistan. So it becomes kind of a behavior that is handled by the marketers themselves, and that brings in contact with foreign culture, and we also call this kind of a cultural transfer that takes place. The issue, let me explain something which is very important in this area. At the beginning, when this was not such an important concept as of today, people or marketers used to believe that if they are successful with their products in their countries, it will be more easy for them to be successful in another country because success was considered to be very simple, the good quality product, a little bit of an advertising, and therefore you go into the new market and it sells. But I remember a problem or a case in which, after the fall of Russia, when the communism regime changed in Russia and Russia broke up into its various independent countries, and the capitalist market regime started moving in to the communist and replaced the communist regime. What happened there was that Western countries, the FMGCs, they thought that Russia was going to be a new growing market. So many companies took their successful products into Russia. Now, in one example, if you recall, when you look at all the shampoos that we find in Pakistan, we normally find 2-in-1 kind of shampoo, which means the bottle has shampoo and conditioner included in one single serving. That means one bottle will have both, so that both the actions of conditioning the hair and cleaning the hair takes place by only using one bottle. So this successful company took their product and launched it. That product was obviously appreciated very much, but after some time they realized that their sales was not as expected and as they had anticipated that had happened in their own country. So logically, therefore, they had to go into market research, which they had not done at the beginning, for the simple reason that they believed that we were successful with our product. Let's call the name Wash and Go, which means both the ingredients were there in that product and they had launched it. So when they carried out research, a very strange finding came through. The problem for Russian, particularly ladies, was that they were not employed and they had enough time. Number two, they were also very conscious of the fact about their standing in the social circles that they lived in. Normally, when guests come, they normally tend to use the bathrooms. And these Russian ladies were worried that if they only had one bottle in their bathroom where they would be, the bottle would have both the things, it would not be considered that they are rich or they are affluent. So their desire was to have two bottles instead of one. Now this study suggested that the marketers had ignored, successful marketers had ignored the reasoning of different cultures having different reasons for or motives for buying a single product. So this company then separated the two and launched these shampoo and conditioner in separate bottles, meeting the need of this new country. Like I said, times change, and when they change, you need to be constantly aware of what can happen. It is in the same context that over about 7 to 8 years, if we go back to Russia, we might find that though there the conditions now most probably are exactly the similar to the Western world, where time becomes of more importance than exhibition of affluence. So it might be a time when the two products in the same bottle might become more sensible. While we were discussing these things, if you recall, we talked about country of origin. The influence of country of origin has been studied very extensively in the world, and people tend to associate certain images with certain countries. It's more or less similar to when certain images are associated with certain brands and certain companies, and people tend to believe outrightly. For example, if we talk about Sony, that Sony has a high technological advantage in electronics, whereas Honda has an advantage in engine technology, and the German car Mercedes and BMW have a high level of technological advantage in automotive systems. So just like those points, we tend to associate images of the product or the produce to a particular country, and this country of origin influence in the international business is becoming very, very potent. There could be a number of reasons, but one is very simple, like I just told you, that there is an association. However, people tend to also have negative feelings about countries, and if you have a negative feeling, obviously it becomes more difficult for that country to be able to bring out or launch a product in the country where this negativity exists. So there is a number of issues that come about, but another further research that has been taken in the country of origin area, there are actually 3 types of country of origin framework which applies. For example, there is country of design. We know that in globalization, we are very much aware that there is an integration of the whole process of the supply chain. For example, you might have a design which could be done, let's say, in Paris or in Italy. And let's see, we'll take an example of these glasses or the goggles that you wear, or whatever kind of product that you look at. You will find that most of the glasses are designed in Paris because that country is known for its design, or Italy because they are known for their designing capabilities. On the other side, these designs may be then forwarded to another country, like say China, where parts are produced. These glasses, the parts, normally the frames are produced in China, whereas when you bring that part to Hong Kong, then the assembly takes place in Hong Kong, and we can see there is an integration of all these processes. Designed somewhere else, a part like the frame is being produced somewhere else because it requires cheap labor, and there is a possibility of having cheap labor with low-cost frames being developed, but designed in Paris or Italy. And then you come to Hong Kong, where very quickly they can put together these products, and it is actually stamped as produced in Hong Kong. Now, given this, so we know that there is a country of design, then there is a country of parts, and then the third is country where we have assembly taking place, which is the example that I've given you. What has been suggested in research is that most of the time people look for country of parts. The consideration is that the parts play the major role in any technologically advanced product. So where the parts are produced, that gives us an important frame for desirability of a product. Even in Pakistan, for example, in the shoe industry, most of the uppers and the sole are being produced in China, and we bring it from there. Why? Because those parts are cheaper than if we were to produce them in Pakistan based on economies of scale and capacity utilizations, where in Pakistan the size of the markets is not that large or is not that voluminous as it is in China. So by nature of economies of scale, the part that is being produced for the shoes is cheaper, and obviously they have the quality which is required by the Pakistani market. So most of the companies therefore try and bring, but assembly takes place here. So keeping these things in mind, particularly, let me say, in the electronic good industry, and the same thing is happening in the car or automotive industries in Pakistan, because most of the products, spare parts or parts, not spare parts, the parts are being produced within the country in terms of the deletion program, but the high technological products which are going to go into the car manufacturing still come from Japan or other advanced countries. So keeping these things in mind, it has been considered in research that companies tend to, or people tend to note where these parts have been manufactured, because they believe that it is the parts which make an important contribution to the performance of any product that they use. Now, we were talking about country of origin, and obviously we were also suggesting that some countries it would be much easier to take the product than in another country, and this relates to the concept of national identity. Now, national identity is how a country defines itself and how strong is this identity interlinked with itself. There are four components to this. One is what we call belief structure. Now, belief structure is normally linked with religious frameworks, and how do you believe, or what do you believe, is the basis of your existence and your behaviors. For example, China, more Confucianism. In America, it's more Christianity. In Pakistan, it's more Islamic thought, which runs through the national identity. Second factor is cultural homogeneity. Now, cultural homogeneity is a very interesting point here, because cultural homogeneity is described by how strongly linked we are on various aspects of our national activity. If you recall, we will find various sports associated with countries. For example, Pakistan, hockey and cricket, whereas in America, basketball, baseball and football, not soccer, but football, they become the national games. Same is the case with so many other areas like dress codes. All these relate to how strongly a nation is together on certain critical issues and what do they believe in a comprehensive manner. So if I was to look at some activity and I can say that, oh, we Pakistanis behave in such and such fashion, means that more or less everybody is solidly fixed onto that point. The more stronger the cultural homogeneity, the strength against a product coming into the market which may not fit in for the purposes of similarities brings an issue. What I'm trying to say is, let's say the Islamic fabric is very strong. Now, nobody can try and bring wine to be sold in Saudi Arabia. It cannot be possible. But if you took a product from here and goes to the other country where there is a little weakness in particularly related to that product's usage, it will become more easy. It is said, therefore, that where the cultural are not that strong related to the use of the product, and it's not considered anathema, or it doesn't go against the cultural grains, therefore that product is easily launchable in a country. So why we need to study the strength of national identity is this: if the identity of the nation is very strong, then bringing in a product which goes against that national identity may become very difficult. So if we want to launch a product in a country where national identity is a little weaker, it might be more easy to do it. Now, the third factor which is involved in it is national heritage. This basically reflects historical patterns. History, our heroes, our leaders, our people who have done a lot for the country, all these things become national heritage. Countries where there is commonality of national heritage, there the national identity becomes very strong. Where they are not, it is much more easy for products or for other cultures to move in and influence the local culture. So we can see that when strong cultures are there, they tend to influence the cultures which are weak in other countries. And we can see these operations taking place. But it has nothing to do with becoming, insecure. It only means that there is some logic of marketing which is applied in these concepts. So rather than becoming insecure in terms of whether our nation has got a strong identity or not, we should look at the possibility of selling products out or importing products in which can fit in with our own system. So that is one of the frameworks. Finally, we know that there is something called ethnocentrism. Now, ethnocentrism basically relates to ethnicity. Ethnicity is racial. So sometimes countries try to exhibit in different times of their growth a very strong ethnocentric behaviors. Ethnocentric behavior is, for example, if I was to say, be Pakistani, buy Pakistani. Now, this is a very strong ethnocentric approach, which means I will try and say, even if the product is bad, good, whatever, try and avoid buying any product which is coming from outside. All these factors try and influence behavior of the consumer also, because when you appeal to the national spirit and national identity, then you could create barriers for entry for products that could come into the country, which for one reason or the other may not be very helpful for the country itself. Given these 3 or 4 factors, it requires, therefore, cross-cultural consumer analysis, which means basically you need to be able to analyze various countries on the strength of the way national identity exists. It's very simple. I mean, in the research that has been done, it has been found that people from Singapore are not that nationally, they are national, they have all the pride in their nation, but from the marketing concept point of view, they are not really concerned where the product comes from. However, on the other side, Japan is pretty strong in that area, and similarly, Americans have been very strong because they have always, in the beginning of the time, after the Second World War, they always avoided the Japanese product because psychologically there was a kind of a break in their psychological frame. This also happens when countries are antagonistic against each other. we have seen it in Pakistan. We have tried to avoid products made in India as much as Indians have avoided products made in Pakistan. Though it may be possible that these products are really required in each other country, and it's nothing to do with whether the product quality was bad or good. It just comes about because of certain animosity that exists. So this national identities application from the marketing point of view is a very significant concept, but it has been misused. It can be misused for various actions. Sometimes people have gone to the extent of using non-tariff barriers to disallow another country's product moving in. Now, just to build it up to your information, what is non-tariff barrier? We know that tariff is like custom duties, excise duties, and so on and so forth. So when we export a product to another country, we have to pay some taxes. Now, within the what you call trade-free zones, there are no extra custom duties. So where there are no custom duties, the product will have the same price which is logically available across the border. So whatever is available in Pakistan, the price will be more or less the same except for the transportation cost in another country. However, non-tariff barriers are very significant, how you apply the concept of this national identity to block products coming in. This happened very significantly in an attempt by the Japanese to stop Harley-Davidson from entering the Japanese market. Now, how was it done? That is an interesting point, and this will show you what I'm saying. Even though there was an agreement, between the Japanese and the American government that they could export motorcycles to each other countries, particularly after the success of Honda's entry into the American market, and they were very, very successful, the Japanese motorcycles. And Harley-Davidson, which was original American heritage kind of a product, suffered a lot. So the Americans decided that they would like to enter the Japanese market. So across the trade agreements, this was made permissible. We also know that Harley-Davidson are normally motorcycles above 500 cc, whereas the Japanese motorcycles were of a low cc capacity. So when the Americans went to Japan, they carried out some studies. Those studies showed that the American product was very highly liked by the Japanese youth and teens. They were very impressed by the heavy sizes. But after the launch of Harley-Davidson in Japan, it was found that no motorcycle could be sold. Now that became an intriguing point because everything suggested that marketing from all points of view, it would be successful. The motorcycles would be successful technologically as well as based on their outlook, their design and everything. So when they were researched and when people started asking questions, why is this motorcycle not being bought? It was found that the Japanese required their youth who wanted to buy the motorcycle to get a license again, a driving license. Now that's a very interesting part of it, that normally there is only one motorcycle driving license like we have it in Pakistan. But in this case, it was told to everybody that if you wanted to drive a 500 cc motorcycle, you had to take the test again and you had to get a new license. And lo and behold, which was not very strange, that none of the people who wanted to buy the motorcycle was getting a 500 cc license. So since there was no license, there was no sale. And this continued for some time till a very strong action by the Japanese government and by the American government and threat to the Japanese government, this kind of non-tariff barriers were lifted. But again, try and understand, there could be many reasons for this. It could be the marketing reason. It could also be ethnocentrism moving in, where companies tried to block products from a country which had been at war with them and more or less had dropped 2 atomic bombs. So could be any reason, but one of the factors is related to national identity. Now, as we were talking about these areas of cross-cultural differences and the reason of country of origin impacts, we would like to now move into, because having discussed all of these points, it becomes quite imperative to try and understand and relate to what kind of analysis do we want to do and what is this analysis all about. The issue is that cross-cultural analysis is actually an effort to determine to what extent are there similarities or differentiate between two nations. Now, I would give you examples of how this logic is applied, and maybe if there is time, we will be able to discuss some research frameworks that could be applied. If not, I'll take it up in the next session where we will try and discuss various research methodologies. But at this point of time, let's suggest why are these factors critical. And remember that I had given you an assignment also to try and help you to judge your knowledge about cross-cultural influences and cross-cultural behaviors or relationships. But in the broader context, we not only try and compare countries, but in some conditions, we may also start trying to look at subcultures. Now, remember, we talked about subcultures within a country's boundaries. There are, I think, if I'm not wrong, there are about 2 or 3 million people in UK alone who are Muslims from the Indo-Pak background. Now, if they are there, then their behaviors must have some relationship with the Muslim world, and we should be able to see how to be able to market to them. Given this, let's see some examples on how companies have tended to respond to this differences. IKEA, you know, this furniture manufacturer which produces furniture, which is what you call DIY, that means do-it-yourself furniture, which means you go to their showroom, you choose certain combinations. They are not full furnitures, they are just broken down pieces actually. So you bring them to your home. There are manuals which tell you exactly how to fit everything together, and lo and behold, you have furniture that you want. You can then add, subtract, do whatever you want to with the furniture as and when the needs change. This has been a very, very successful product. IKEA has done a great job, and they are more or less now in 28 or 29 countries. And it is looking at these cross-cultural differences that IKEA, which is basically in terms of when they have a website, their original homepage website is in English, but they have created web pages for all these other countries in their own languages. For example, in Saudi Arabia, their language is Arabic, and they have been able to define all the manuals and everything in terms of the Arabic language. Not only that, for example, in Italy, when they promote their product in terms of the kind of promotion that they use, they normally tend to show people lounging in the chairs and having drinks, hard drinks in the sense that they were having wine or whatever. But when they go to Saudi Arabia and there they have to promote their product, they cannot do that because of the cross-cultural variations. Now, from Italy, they can market using the same promotional campaign to France, to Spain, wherever they want to. But they can't do the same in Saudi Arabia. So therefore, Saudi Arabia, their ads or their advertisement is more conservative. They're more family-oriented, and the clothes and everything, the abayas they wear, is typically what a Saudi Arabian would wear. So keeping this simple logic, they have been very, very successful in trying to associate there. In a similar case, let's look at another issue. Mineral water across France and Italy is normally drunk by about 88% of the adult population. So adult population, 88%, both in France and in Italy, they drink mineral water. However, the basic reason or the basic motive behind a Frenchman drinking mineral water is the tap water issue. The tap water is considered to be unhygienic, so therefore they drink mineral water. On the other side, let's say in Germany, the Germans are more into vegetarian food, vegetarian lifestyle. So for them, having mineral water relates to their vegetarian lifestyle. Now, contrast between the two countries. France and Germany is right across the borders. More or less every European country has borders connecting to each other. But even in this frame of common European Union, we find the drinking of mineral water, which is the end outcome, has got different motivations. One is because of hygienic conditions. The other is basically of lifestyle conditions. Now, if we make a mistake in promoting the water in a different form, you can imagine the impact that will be on the losses or the loss of relativity of the product and the consumer. We've already discussed this quite extensively, and we are aware that people always try to relate the product with their own needs and requirements. Now, in case of French, they are more concerned on the hygienic ground, whereas in Germany, they are more concerned with lifestyle, which is vegetarian lifestyle. Now, in the same form, I'm talking about various countries using the same water, but this is different. So, like I made a point in the very beginning, that there are a number of issues that are taking place in the cultural studies around the world. In some areas, there are convergences. In some area, there is a divergence. This example is of a divergence, but let's look at a point where we can see convergence taking place within the marketing of a product. Business class or first class flying in planes, you will see all the international airlines try and promote their business class and their first class targeted to a very highly discerning business class or businessmen, business people who have got a very vast globalized view of the world. Their needs are more or less the same, so all the airlines tend to satisfy those needs, and therefore their way of promoting those products are more or less similar. So there is a similarity in this kind of a product, and that is what is going on. Now, finally, there is another example that I would like to give you about a subculture within a larger context of a country culture. And I just mentioned to you, let's say, a very large Muslim population in UK. And we see that banking needs, we know that normal standard banking practices require interest as payments or interest on loans or in deposits. But Muslims, because of their religious beliefs, which is one part of the national identity, which I mentioned earlier, they try and avoid, not only avoid, they actually refuse to go for interest banking. So for that purpose, you will find most of the banks, even in UK, have started producing Sharia compliant products to satisfy the need of that subculture which exists in UK. And this is also true all over the world now, as Sharia compliant products are being produced and launched to attract the Muslim population. And we already know that Muslims have a lot of wealth which is sitting around, and therefore it becomes a very attractive market. Now, remember I had given you a small exercise. The idea was not to give you anything very extraordinary, but just to get a hint of what is possible. And I'll give you an example also, because when I was in Malaysia, in my university, we were having an annual dinner. And on that annual dinner, and this was something which I had not known, though I had been in the business of exporting products, but most of my products were going to the SAARC countries, which were very well known. But in Malaysia, on this dinner, we had gifts, which was being brought in. It was a New Year's Eve, and this was a New Year dinner. So everybody, the school, the universities, faculty, as well as the students and the members of the board of governors, and everybody was there on this dinner. After the dinner, the idea was to open gifts, and the gift was basically in the form of random, which means I would pick up a number and I'll call my number, and whatever the gift's number was would be given to me. So it was there that I saw this, and it became a very interesting phenomena. And obviously, after studying quite a bit on it, one can understand what the logic was. I saw that we were all opening our gifts. Then one of the Chinese, who was the member of the board of governors of that university, he opened his gift and he went into a shock, because the gift had something which in their culture or their value system was what you call a bad omen, which was not liked because it had connotations in their culture of something very bad that would happen. This triggered off a number of aspects, and then through some logic, I've been able to draw this chart. And like I gave you this chart, and there were some gifts that if you were going to another country as a marketing manager, and if you carried all these various products, which product will you not give in a country? That was the question. So let's quickly look at what you have been able to do and then see what is my logic. Now, leather handbag. Which country would it not go to? Saudi Arabia. I don't think there is a problem taking it to Saudi Arabia. Argentina, again, no problems. China, UK, no problems. Yeah, it could be a problem in India because of their religious beliefs about the cow. So you cannot take a leather good specifically or particularly if it belongs to the cow leather. So you won't take it to India. And if you do and you offer it, you might get into trouble. Same case is with letter opener, and it's a very interesting part of letter opener concept. Would you give it to in Saudi Arabia, Argentina, whether you offer it in India, China, United Kingdom? And remember, particularly in Pakistan, all our Onyx products includes letter openers, very, very handsomely made letter openers. Well, all the other countries except Argentina. And the issue is very interesting, because in the olden times, when somebody wanted to fight with somebody, he would send a kind of a knife. Knife indicated as a message that I want to fight with you. This was something which is traditional. In UK, these fights used to take place also in history, which were called duels. Duels would, when two people, one against one, used to have either through the sword or they would fight with pistols, but only one to one. In UK, the way of telling another person that I would like to fight with you was to throw a glove on the person's face. But in Argentina, the approach was that you send a knife kind of a thing, which is basically what is the letter opener doing. Now, in the same context, red roses you will never take to and offer to a male or a business partner in UK, because red roses have connotations of romanticism. So in UK, it is not considered to be a good thing. Clock. Now, I was giving you the example of that Chinese who opened the gift, and what he saw was a clock. Now, it is again in the cultural frames, if I want to have a bad say, or जिसको मैं कहूँ मैं किसी को बदवा दूँ, तो उसके लिए मैं घड़ी भेज दूँ. मकसद क्या है? What is the logic behind it? It is time. So it suggests that your time is now up. So if I have sent a watch, which is obviously normally going to be a watch which is not running, so the connotation of the culture is that your time is up, and which basically means death. So we have to be very careful. Again, we normally tend to, without realizing, may take a watch to offer it to a Chinese partner, which may have wrong connotations, which is what I saw in Malaysia. Finally, bottle of wine, which is not a big thing, which is not something to have a lot of consideration. Saudi Arabia, obviously, nobody could dare bring a gift of wine into Saudi Arabia. Now, given these factors, it will become very interesting to know where there are differences, there are also things which are similarities in the system. And one major similarity that is coming up very rapidly and has been researched quite extensively and is also becoming a significant market is the middle class in the developing countries around the world. Now, like I was saying to you, we have been talking about cultures diverging from each other, but we will now look at certain things, like I told you, where convergence is taking place. And one of these areas is the middle class. According to research which has been undertaken over the world, it seems that the middle class is a growing phenomena, and they have similar habits, because particularly the middle class is more interested around the world in buying televisions, refrigerators, more products which will make their life comfortable, because that is what they were striving for, and we have already read that in social class terminologies. So this middle class, which is becoming quite similar around the world, is becoming a very interesting phenomena. However, the size of the middle class is varying from one country to the other. Let's say in Pakistan, according to the common denominator, which is recorded in the world, it is $5,000 purchasing power parity. Now, I'm adding a new concept to your knowledge, which is called purchasing power parity. We already know what is per capita income. In Pakistan, at this point of time, it is over $1,000, but our purchasing power parity at the average is close to about $2,500 to $3,000. But the middle class, which is close to about 7 million people in the census of, I think, 2003, 2004, they own $5,000 purchasing power parity. Now, just to clear it so that you don't get too confused, purchasing power parity basically means that if there is a basket of goods that you can buy, let's say at 600 rupees in Pakistan, but the same basket of good you will buy, let's say, at $60, then our purchasing power is different based on the exchange rate. Now, the exchange rate between Pakistan and America, the US dollar, is close to about 85, 86 rupees. But here the basket is for 600 rupees, and in America it is for $60. So from there we can quickly pick up what will be the purchasing power parity in these two conditions using the nominal exchange rate. So in that category, we are trying to suggest that middle class is becoming similar in nature, and it is varying. For example, in Pakistan, Nigeria, it's about 7%, but in case of South Korea, more or less 90% people are supposed to be in the middle class, whereas in India, it's about 9% of the population. But consider that 9% of over 1 billion people, एक अरब से ज्यादा लोगों के अंदर 9% मिलियंस में चला जाता है, और पाकिस्तान में 160 मिलियन के ऊपर 5 से 6% is close to about 7 million. So the point is that this shift is taking place. Or this is not only the interesting factor, what is happening internationally, which is actually bringing things more gently towards convergence, is change in a number of denominators which try and study various cultures and countries. For example, there was a difference between the developed countries and the developing countries, and I have some numbers that I will show you which relate to, let's say, literacy rate, the life expectancy, and the calorie intake. That means calorie intake is basically how much calories that we get from food. Now, if you look at the 2000, that means the information that was generated in 2000, the literacy rate in the developing countries was 64%, and in developed countries it was 98%. However, the projection is that by 2050, that is about 40 years from now, the rate would be in the developing countries 90%, and in the developed countries it will be 98%. So the what you call the literacy is now converging to each other, and that would bring a tremendous amount of change in the way we behave. Secondly, if you look at life expectancy, in 2000, the developing countries had a life expectancy of 64 years, and in the world, developed world, it was 77. According to forecast, in 2050, it will be 76 years for the developing countries and 82 years for the developed countries, meaning thereby people are going to live longer, not only in the developed countries but also in the developing countries. So as life expectancy increases, many behaviors will start converging. In the same case, if you look at the daily calorie account, in 2000, the daily calorie intake was for the developing countries 2600 calories, whereas in the developed countries it was about 3100. But as projected, in 2050, it will be 3000 for developing countries and 3200 for the developed countries. So again, there is going to be convergence in what we eat and how much of sugar, meat, bread, whatever we have, how much is being consumed. You can see the change. And if we go backward in history, and if we go to 1990, we will see a major change from that point to 2000 and then projected to 2050. The question is basically, how are people converging? In the same way, we use middle class की बात कर रहा हूँ, तो middle class में मिसाल के तौर पे this McDonald's और the fast food जो restaurants हैं जो कि Western world say now have shifted towards developing countries and they find a huge market in our area. तो McDonald's का जो middle class का use in America था, वो था time बचाने के लिए. It was basically to save time because middle class people are normally employed in the lower level of jobs. So there the idea was to quickly get food which is fastly available and you rush back to whatever you are doing because time is very short for middle class people in America, in the developed worlds where they are doing so many things and they have to keep moving ahead of the time. But in countries like developing countries, McDonald's is for family get-together. So what we see is not professionals going to McDonald's, but families going to McDonald's for a evening out or having lunch together. Now the point is, this is the same thing which is also applicable to major retail outlets. For example, Macro and Metro, which have come out with a different retailing business. We have already seen that. So America and the Western world में उसका इस्तेमाल जो है retail outlets का, इस किस्म के retail outlets का वो ये है कि a single parent or one family member rushes to that place, tries to buy a complete month's products to use in the home because they don't have time to repeatedly go to these places and buy the product in smaller bulks or smaller units. But in Pakistan, this kind of a location or a retail outlet is more like a family outing. So the whole family gets together, grandfather, grandmother, the parents, the children, everybody goes to these places not to buy for the month, but to basically enjoy an outing. Okay, now this brings me to the end of the lecture. I will continue with this convergence and then also discuss in the next session what is basically the research methodologies. Now, what we have done today is to complete the logic of the imperative of cross-cultural research on country basis, looking at some origin of country logic, some acculturation points. We have also discussed certain other features. Then I'll continue with the next part in the next session. Thank you very much and take care. Allah Hafiz.